It's no secret that the Grandmaster title is no longer quite as prestigious as it once was. Back in my day, Grandmaster was reserved for the players who unironically had piss bottles on their desk. Think like Asmongold without the racism. Sometimes actually still with the racism. If they're Europeans, just ask them what they think about Romanians and see what happens. Regardless, since then, we've seen a myriad of new items that increase our power by massive amounts. Think the Zerite crossbow with a guaranteed 110 damage spec. Tubican Shadow, a weapon so powerful it forced the J-Mons to block No Monkey on Discord because he wouldn't stop messaging them about it. And that's merely 2 items of the dozens that have come into the game since then, bringing large amounts of power creep with them and fundamentally altering the methods that we used to achieve this title. Not only that, but we have seen a massive proliferation in things like boosting discords, where you can purchase said Europeans to boost you through the challenge with ease. Just make sure you don't turn on voice chat.
Terrorists win.
So yes, Grandmaster has certainly become easier, but that does not mean that it's easy. You still have to display a mastery of many RuneScape encounters and mechanics to achieve this title. I have consulted with some of the top RuneScape minds, many of which have Grandmaster on multiple accounts, to bring you the top 10 hardest combat achievements in all of old school RuneScape. Number 10, finding a team. Okay, that one's a joke. For the purpose of this video, we are not taking into account team requirements, solely mechanical skill needed on your part. Number 10 is actually facing Jad head-on 2. More colloquially known as Melee Inferno, this combat achievement requires you to beat the Inferno without equipping range or mage weapons before reaching Zuck. This is actually a good example of the power creep we talked about coming into play, ironically enough from a pretty mid-level weapon, the Noxious Halberd. Since it's a halberd, you can attack from one tile away, completely avoiding melee attacks of the NPCs in the Inferno. Prior to this weapon, that was a big consideration in setting up your prayer flicking patterns and wave solves. With that said, this CA still earns its spot on the top 10 because the Inferno is incredibly difficult, and this is no exception. For this specific challenge, you have to understand how to set up waves in an entirely different way than you've ever learned. Your prayer flicks require much more precise timing, you have to have a more in-depth knowledge of pathing and NPC mechanics, you have much less room to solve the waves. This challenge is definitely no sleeper. It's worth mentioning at least once, but this list is obviously incredibly subjective because different people find different things hard, but with everybody that I talked to, this consistently came up as a solid pick for number 10. Number 9 takes us to General Grardor with the achievement Defense Matters. Some people might be surprised to see Grardor on this list. However, if you've done all the CAs, you probably aren't. This combat achievement requires you to kill Grardor 2 times consecutively without taking any damage from his minions. Now at first glance, this doesn't seem particularly difficult, but oh my god, are you wrong? The idea is that you have to prey flick his minions with tick perfect accuracy for 2 kills in a row. Now at first, I and many other players thought, hey, I'll just grind bandos for a few hours and with some lucky RNG, all the minion hits will be 0 and I'll snag this freely. Not to rain on your parade, but mathematically the chances of that happening are 1 in 2.4 trillion. That's with a T. And if that number sounds insane, it's because I made it up. But realistically, this will never happen to you. So what are you to do? The issue is that all of his minions spawn on the exact same tick, so you have to stand in a perfect location to off-tick 2 of the minions first, then run to very specific tiles to off-tick the 3rd, but here comes Bandos punching your shit in, so you gotta run around perfectly while flicking perfectly for 2 kills in a row, and it looks like this.
So here's the method. As soon as Bandos spawns, we wait 1 tick, and then we attack. Very important, you wait that 1 tick. And then once the minions spawn, after the ranger attacks, we pray mage, then pray melee, then click on the angler, then AFK fair tick, then click pray range, then click mage prayer, and now we begin a 5-tick loop, which is attack boss, click angler to run, melee pray, range prayer, mage prayer.
What the hell is even that? Mulgo Kirby had to invent calculus to make this method possible for players like me. This is a really frustrating one because of the God Wars KC requirement, setup kills, and sheer skill required, so it's definitely earned its number 9 spot. Number 8, the ad spot. The 8th most difficult achievement is learning back-end web development in both Python and Go. And you guys aren't going to believe this because today's sponsor is boot.dev, which teaches you exactly that. But not only do you guys get to learn, you also get to have fun, because this course is laid out like one of your favorite RPGs. You get to learn coding while completing quests, getting XP, levels, leaderboards. The goal here is that you just don't get bored, because typically that's why people give up on their goals. They're just not engaged. There's a reason you are seeing these guys everywhere, and it's because they're becoming really popular. With good reason too, because with boot dev, you spend a huge chunk of time actually writing code, because that's by far and away the best way to learn. They also have a really great offer because they never want students to feel like they're wasting their money, so you get a 30-day, no questions asked money-back guarantee and a free demo of the interactive experience on every course. So go to boot.dev and try out the courses for free, and then use my code TastyLife to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. Thank you to BootDev for sponsoring today's video. Sorry, number 8, it wasn't a fluke. This one comes in from the JAD challenges. You have to beat 5 and 6 JADs back to back with no deaths in between. This is deceptively hard, and that's coming from someone who really loves the JAD challenges. 6 JADs is insanely fun, but doing it requires a really good feel for the in-game tick system. Now, a small side note, if any of you are curious about what a game tick is, or if you want a refresher on a lot of the mechanics I'm talking about in here, I have an older but still salient video that covers this. It's called This Is Why You're Bad at RuneScape, and I'll link it down below. Jump scare warning, I have hair. This challenge requires you to perfectly read the prayer of every JAD in order, change your prayer nearly twice a second accordingly, and deal with all the healers that spawn. For newer players, this challenge alone seems pretty daunting, mainly because it is, but there's a very distinct rhythm to it, and once you get it, it's pretty easy to maintain the flow. However, in comes 5 JADs, which some people consider to be even more difficult than 6. That's because there's this really weird stutter in the middle where you don't actually swap prayers. It's kind of like listening to a metronome that randomly skips a beat and leaves you hanging. So doing both of those back to back can be somewhat of a nightmare. Number 7, insanity. This takes us to our first raid, the Tombs of a Masket. This requires you to perform perfect wardens in a group of 2 or more at 300 raid level with every boss invocation active. This is known as a perfection task, and typically these can be some of the most technically demanding CAs. So you cannot get hit with any avoidable damage, not even a smidge, lest your ass gets sent back to the bank camel. Phase 1 wardens, easy peasy. Phase 2, all right, watch out a little bit, keep your wits about you. Phase 3, oh god, oh no, keep the pattern in your head, buddy, watch those prayers. Phase 4. Phase 4 is the killer here. It's fundamentally difficult by itself, requiring superbly clean pathing, planning, and close attention to the myriad of mechanics that can damage you. But add on top of that, the mental pressure of knowing that you are so close to the finish line, and one single mistake means the 30 minutes that you spent getting to the final boss to even attempt this will be flushed down the toilet if you fail. It's truly mind-breaking, and this is some of the most frustrated I was during any of the combat achievements. I spent like 3 hours trying to do this with It's Will, and we didn't, and he hasn't talked to me since. So yeah, number 7. Number 6, we are heading to the Colosseum now with reinforcements. This is kind of a sleeper pick. I actually didn't personally struggle with this one that much, but that's why they call me the Brick House.
Brick house, brick house.
However, I acknowledge that I had some good RNG on my side. For this achievement, you need bees. Bees 2, Solar Flare 2, and Quartet active. You know every single modifier that adds the worst possible mechanic to the Colosseum? Yeah, those ones. All of them. Each wave spawns with 47 NPCs immediately honing in on your position. I felt like a World War I soldier in the trenches, and I know that I am not cut out for the military because I don't want my wife to cheat on me and I'm already scared of fireworks. So yeah, there's a lot of juggling you have to do with this achievement, and it's a lot less about mechanical perfection like the last one was, and much more about mental acuity. You have to recognize patterns in spawns, solve waves in a couple seconds, and set up those solves to deal properly with the onslaught of extra mechanics. This is no joke, and that's not even mentioning the boss itself, Soul Herit, which is also hard if you were curious. It's worth noting there is an RNG factor here. It took me 2 runs to get to Soul Herit with the actual modifiers I needed, which is pretty lucky because I know people who required upwards of a dozen runs, and that's not so lucky. But again, RNG is not factored into the difficulty, so your mileage may vary. Now it's time to get into the top 5. These spots were very competitive and required literal hours of deliberation with me and Solo Mission in Discord. A session which ended with both of us deciding that we were bad and wondering why we had any authority on this topic at all, but a consensus was in fact reached. Our 5th spot takes us right back to the Inferno with Inferno Speedrunner. The goal of this one is very simple: complete the Inferno in under 65 minutes. Now there's a very specific breed of person that loves the Inferno. You'll know who they are because they won't shut the fuck up about it. To these people, this combat achievement might occupy a spot in the Weenie Hut Junior tier, but to anyone with friends in real life, this still ranks among the most difficult tasks in game. Certainly this has been affected by power creep quite a bit compared to the other ones. Our range gear is extremely good now. We have prayer regen pots, a multitude of mage upgrades, but that doesn't fundamentally change what we need to be able to do for this speedrun task. You have to understand really complicated concepts like all the different variations of blob flicks, melee dig positioning. You have to be fast and aggressive with solves, and at its highest level, Inferno speedrunning is quite literally pure art. And while maybe not on the cutting edge of our current skill level, this achievement still requires, I would say, the most complex understanding of any piece of content in the entire top 10 list. Number 4, coming in as the hardest combat achievement in all of Tombs of a Masket, is Perfection of Het. This one is awful. If you watch my Road to Grandmaster video on it, you'll remember. Perfection of Het takes place in the path with the mining puzzle and the Akka boss. And to complete it, you have to be in a group of 2 or more while completing the puzzle room and boss room with every single invocation on perfectly in expert mode. That's a lot of things, and it's another perfection task. Obviously, mining is free, but every single invocation for Akka with 2 people poses some extreme difficulties. The butterflying must occur perfectly the whole time. The special attacks give you memory puzzle and orbs at the same time. This requires one person in a staircase and the other to perform the memory puzzle as intended. It's genuinely exhausting to even describe. Keeping this up perfectly and then doing the orb phase without taking a single hit, both of you, it's agonizing, and frankly a miracle that we have 3 more combat achievements that are harder than this one. I got PTSD writing this out, so let's go ahead and move on. Now before we hit the top 3, I have a few honorable mentions. Any of these could have made an appearance in the top 10 and no one would have batted an eye, but something had to take those spots, so I figured I'd bring up the ones we debated over. First off is No Time for a Drink, aka doing the fight caves without losing a single prayer point. This is more an endurance test than anything else. It doesn't require complex solves, but you do have to be quite cognizant of your prayer flicks and also very careful with the bats that drain your prayer. A single lapse in concentration can send you back to the start. This actually isn't even one I considered myself, but pretty much every top tier player mentioned this as a source of pain on their journey towards GM. Second is All Praise Zabak. You have to complete Zabak on path level 4 with every invocation active without losing a single prayer point. Again, there's a pattern here. Take something not very hard and say, hey, if you lose a prayer point, you can go fuck yourself. This is again more of a concentration thing, and I would consider it a fair bit harder than the Fight Caves one. And finally, back in the Inferno, the floor is lava. You have to complete the Inferno without letting a melee or dig to your location. Now, if the melee NPC in the Inferno can't attack you for 50 game ticks or 30 seconds, they will dig to you. Normally, this gives you more than enough time to kill whatever needs to be killed, but now suddenly the meleeer becomes the focus of the waves and forces you to enter certain solves that are just insanely uncomfortable. Poop rating, A+. Now on to the top 3 most difficult combat achievements in all of old school RuneScape. Pause the video now and put your guesses in the comments, because if you get all 3 right, I will personally give you a bond. Certainly no one's gonna cheat here, and there's no way in hell I'll pretend that I never offered this deal in the first place. Number 3 is one you have all been waiting to see. Perfect Theater. This entails doing the entirety of Theater of Blood, taking 0 avoidable damage, and doing every mechanic perfectly as intended. You can't let a single crab enter Maiden, no flies on Bloat, you can't let any pillars fall, nor attack a Nihilacus with the incorrect style, so no AoE attacks in that room, but you best be on top of the pillar health. If you can make it past the first 3 rooms, you get somewhat of a reprieve with Sodaseg, but after that you get the RNG brick wall that is Zarpus. You can't let the Exhumes heal more than twice, so this phase kills so many runs because it's just possible that you are 1 tile too far to avoid an extra heal, even with perfect triangulation. Then you have to perfectly path the entirety of Zarpus with your entire team DDing, pray you hit enough specs to kill it before shit gets real, and then after that is Verzik, the cherry on top of 30 minutes of suffering and concentration and constipation. This is probably the most infamous combat achievement. It is quite hard, and yes, it's very punishing. You have to relearn the raid, more or less, because all of the current metas revolve around deficiencies that purposely ignore or skirt certain mechanics. And I didn't even take into account how hard it is to find people that want to do this with you, but just imagine for me the type of psycho who's down for this. Third place is very deserved. Number 2, the final and hardest Inferno achievement. It wasn't even close. This requires you to beat the Inferno without ever falling below 50 HP, so in essence, 0 mistakes. When you're brewed up to full health, it still only takes one single mage hit to fail the task. This requires absolute perfection from you. Not only that, but you have to act quickly and solve the entire wave properly within 2 seconds before the mobs declare their next attack. There's also the addition of the sets at Zuck, soft requiring you to be comfortable with forcefully off-ticking the Major and the Rager for a guaranteed completion. I genuinely cannot think of a single other piece of content that requires this, especially for this long of an encounter. If any of you struggled as much as I did with this one, please tell me it's going to be okay. And without further ado, the single hardest achievement in the entirety of old school RuneScape, achieving Blood Torva. Now technically this is 4 achievements, but for all intents and purposes we are linking this into one. This requires you to beat each of the 4 Desert Treasure 2 bosses in their awakened forms. This is by far the hardest achievement. It's genuinely not even close. Blood Torva asks a very simple question. What if Jagex wanted to make a boss so hard that even no monkey would say, this is acceptable? Prayer flicking against 3 different attack styles? What if you had to do that every 50 milliseconds? Not enough? Well, you better be standing on the correct tile at all times or else you die in real life. There's what Steve Jobs did with the iPhone, and then there's this. The level of flow you'd have to reach to even come into the vicinity of an idea such as this one is typically reserved for people like Yoda. I truly don't even know if it's possible to make RuneScape content that's harder than this. And these are only 5 to 7 minute fights. It's a far cry from Raids, Inferno, Colosseum, whatever. However, in that time, they demand you display an extreme mastery of every single skill that exists in RuneScape. The click accuracy necessary for Enraged Leviathan makes the average Blorva owner akin to prime CSGO Scream.
Counter-terrorists win.
The IQ and reaction times necessary to process and execute 14 perfect clicks in 5 seconds. The Vardorvis encounter will be sure to push you to your limit. For Duke, you must have a literal metronome in your brain and perfectly understand the logic and rule set behind how your character paths. Otherwise, you have no chance. And lastly, the Whisperer. I hope you've been doing your brain teasers, because have fun memorizing 80 different puzzles and losing your in-game sanity just as fast as your real life sanity. Let me know how your top 10 stacks up against these, and gamers, stay tasty.